So guys, after discussing about the postulates of Bohr model, the success and the limitations of Bohr model, let's talk about now derivation of orbit angular momentum. Now, if you remember the second postulates of Bohr model, mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi. From where it comes? Let's see. Now, this was proposed by Bohr. He said that there are some circular orbits like K, L, M, N, R shells, or we can say first orbit, second orbit, third orbit, fourth orbit. If we take one orbit out of it, this is that orbit. Now, if electron is moving in a linear path, there will be a wave associated with it. This is said by de Broglie. Now here electron is moving in a circular path. Therefore, wave will also move in circular path. You can see clearly, wave is also moving in a circular path, and this length is one wavelength. It's wavelength of this particular wave, and we can have another wavelength, another wavelength, another, and in this case we are having 6 wavelengths of that particular wave. Now, it is not necessary the number is 6. It can be 2, it can be 10, or it can be n. And this length is the circumference of that particular orbit. So we can say that 2 pi r, that is the circumference, is equal to L lambda. N is the number of wavelength. So where r is the radius of the orbit and n is an integer, right? So from the de Broglie wave equation, we know that lambda is equal to h upon mv. So what we will do, 2 pi r is equal to n lambda. We are putting the value of lambda here. So 2 pi r was equal to L lambda. Now 2 pi r is equal to n into h upon mv. Now what we will do? Multiply this mv in left hand side and this 2 pi on right hand side. So we will get mvr is equal to nh upon 2 pi. That's how de Broglie said the Bohr's model, the second postulate, is correct, and we can say that mvr is equal to h upon 2 pi will be always integral multiple of h upon 2 pi. It will be either h upon 2 pi, 2h upon 2 pi, 3h upon 2 pi, 4h upon 2 pi. It will be like that. But if electron tries to change its radius or tries to change its velocity, mass is constant, mass of electron is constant, but if it is trying to change its velocity or it is trying to change its radius, then what will happen? Then the wave will become discontinuous. But you know that wave should be continuous. So you can see that if an electron is moving in this circular orbit, there will be a wave associated with it, and if we try to change the radius, then wave will become discontinuous. For example, we know that if the value of the radius in the first shell is r, the second shell it will be 4 into r. In the third shell it will be 9 into r. It means that these are the fixed value of the radius, and if we try to make the value of the radius in between 4r or 9r or 16r or 25r, then definitely the wave will become discontinuous, which is not possible, right? Let's discuss about the significance of dual nature of matter. Now guys, let's talk about the significance of dual nature of matter. Now we know that from de Broglie's wave equation, whenever a particle moves, that is matter, having mass m and the velocity v, there is a wave associated with it, and that wave is not electromagnetic wave, that wave is matter wave. And we can find the value of its wavelength by the simple formula lambda is equal to h upon mv, where m is the mass and v is the velocity of that particular particle. But if cricket ball is moving with the same velocity, we don't talk about it. Cricket ball is also matter, and there should be a wave associated with it. There should be wavelength of that particular matter wave, and we should find the wavelength of the matter wave by the formula lambda is equal to h upon mv, where h is the Planck's constant, v is the velocity of the cricket ball, and m is the mass of the cricket ball. But we don't talk about it. Why? Let me explain you. Actually, the mass of electron is 9.1 into 10 to the minus 31 kgs. That is very small. And mass of the cricket ball is almost about 1.5 into 10 to the minus 1 kgs. Now you can see clearly the mass of the electron is 10 to the power 30 times smaller than that of cricket ball, right? And if we apply the formula, h is the Planck's constant. If the velocity is the same, the wavelength is inversely proportional to the mass. If mass is very big or the value of the mass is very high, the wavelength will be very small. It will be too small that it will be unmeasurable. That's why we don't talk about the de Broglie wavelength of the macroscopic particles. It means that it is valid only for the microscopic particles and the subatomic particles. For example, electron, proton, neutron, and about alpha particle. Right? So let's discuss one question based on it. So now, in this question is asking the de Broglie wavelength of a particle with the mass 1 gram, mass is given to us, and velocity 100 meter per second, velocity is given to us, is 4 options are given to us, that is 6.63 into 10 to the minus 35 meters, 6.63 into 10 to the minus 34 meters, 6.63 into 10 to the minus 33 meters, 6.65 into 10 to the minus 35 meters, and we have to find out the correct option, right? So, the solution now, this is a question based on de Broglie wavelength, and we all know that the de Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to h upon m into v, where h is the Planck's constant, m is the mass of the particle, and v is the velocity, right? Now, what we will do? We will put the value of h, that is 6.63 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 34 approximately, divided by mass is given to us, that is 1 gram. Now in this case we have to convert the mass into kgs, right? So this will be 10 to the power minus 3 kgs, and velocity is also given to us, that is 100 meter per second. So 100 meter per second, right? Now 6.63 into 10 to the power minus 34 divided by, now 10 to the minus 3 multiplied by 100 will be equal to 10 to the power minus 1. So it will be 10 to the power minus 1, and our answer will be 6.63 into 10 to the power minus 33 meters, right? So if we look at the answer will be third one, right? So the answer is option number 3. That's okay, but question can be asked by giving the mass of the substance or the mass of the particle with the kinetic energy also, or he can give the charge of that particle with the voltage. Now, if in any question mass of the particle is given, that is equal to m, and its kinetic energy is given, that is Ke. Although we have discussed about this thing in this lecture, but again for your knowledge, I am telling you this thing. In this case, lambda is equal to h upon under root 2m multiplied by Ke, right? Now, this we have already discussed, but from where this expression comes, that we have to know. So, what happens if you talk about the derivation? We all know that kinetic energy is equal to half mv square, right? And let us multiply this by m. So, multiply above equation by m. What we will get? We will get m into Ke, that is equal to half m square v square, right? Now, multiplying by 2, when we multiply by 2, we will get twice into m into kinetic energy, that is equal to m square v square. And we can write under root of 2 into m into kinetic energy, that is equal to mv, right? Now, reciprocating it, after reciprocating we will get 1 divided by 2 into m into kinetic energy is equal to 1 upon mv, right? And after multiplying this equation by h, that is Planck's constant, we will get h upon 2 into m multiply by the kinetic energy is equal to h upon mv. Now, we all know that this h upon mv is equal to lambda. That's why we can write, therefore, lambda, which is h upon mv, that will be equal to h upon under root of 2 into m into Ke. So, this is the derivation of this particular formula, and this is the end of the lecture also. In the next lecture, we are going to study about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle as well as the quantum mechanical model. Till then, goodbye.